before you a
Smile at me.
rough first draft which has been gone through. There are a few sections, and the Secretary can note them as we go along, where we withheld action pending more information. The procedure now would be to go through the document article by article, and I will ask if there's any amendment or discussion of any particular provision. We will not move again on any article, although we will take up any amendments that are offered. When we get to the end, we will ask if there are any amendments to conform to internal changes that may have been made along the way. In the absence of that, we will be in a position to adopt the document. I don't know how we'll handle some dangling issues that may have to be put off tonight because there are some dangling issues. Charter. So, with that in mind,
there's a box on the chair in the office.
okay, with that in mind, let's begin by looking at the preamble. Is there any discussion or amendment to the preamble?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask one question? I apologize, I was not at the meeting. This information from Rick, has this been acted upon, or is
Let me
this...
comment on this briefly also. This was my work paper that I did in the hotel in Juneau. I asked Debbie to type it up for me. It was not necessarily intended to go out to the full commission unabridged. Since it did, there's nothing in here that I'm ashamed of.
I wish it went out, but I didn't have a phone to check
Well,
with
that's
anyone.
all right. I know that. I don't certainly. But I will feel free to retrench from some of this if I deem it appropriate. As I
We
would.
won't hold you to it.
Okay.
All right. Is there any discussion or amendment to the preamble?
Can we stand
Mr. Garnett?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, the one question I have heard some comments, Vic Fisher particularly mentioned to me, that the idea of a responsive self-government is in some sense a tautology, or at least not a very meaningful phrase, in that if it's truly a self-government, it will by definition be responsive. He thinks it's just awkward phrasing. I'm inclined to agree with him. I don't know. It's a matter of taste, I imagine.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend by the deletion of the word self.
Mrs. Sturkowski moves to strike self.
second that.
Seconded by Mrs. Holmes. Is there discussion?
No, Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think that responsive government does it. Individual rights and common goals. I agree with Mr. Fisher's remark.
Is there any other discussion? Is there objection to the amendment? If not, the deletion is made. Are there any other changes to the preamble?
My suggestions are included in the little draft that I had here. I thought it was useful to insert somehow the idea of reducing waste and duplication and of local control of local affairs, which sort of brings in the idea of one rule as opposed to just purely unification. Maybe a suggestion.
Are there further?
Yeah, I'm seconding what Rick is saying. I like that idea of that local affairs being in there.
Are you moving to put in the entire phrase? Or
I so move.
are you speaking of reduce waste and duplication and secure maximum local control?
Local control, local affairs, and do establish and ordain.
In other words,
Do you want the waste and duplication, Fred?
And we the people make more support individual and reduce waste and secure maximum.
Mr. Chairman, the difference here is that we have to achieve common goals, which is not in Rick's proposal, and Rick has to reduce waste and duplication in the
I
maximum.
don't know the difference. I just was trying to get clarified.
I would move, Mr. Chairman, that we add and secure maximum local control of local affairs in the...
Yeah, I might even speak against my reduce waste and duplication.
Yeah, I'd leave that out.
Because that implies that there will remain
Right.
some waste and duplication.
I'd leave that out, but I would pick up, I would propose that we pick up secure maximum local control of local affairs language.
Where would you like to put it? After rights?
After rights?
After.
After rights is all right, to support, and to support individual rights.
amendment is to insert and secure maximum local control of local affairs after the word rights.
And leave out the end preceding.
Yes. And is seconded by Mrs. Sturgill-Lewski. Is there discussion of this amendment? Is there objection? If not, the amendment is made.
Mr. Chairman, just, would you briefly read that again?
We, the people of Anchorage, in order to form a more responsive government to achieve common goals, to support individual rights, and secure maximum local control of local affairs, hereby establish this charter.
Just reading it shouldn't it have and to secure, so it would be the same form all the way through?
And to secure. Is there any other amendment to the preamble?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the attorney whether hereby establish is all right without ordain. Is there a reason why we had to ordain it?
No,
No, unless you're a Catholic.
Okay.
Smart aleck.
We move to Article 1, name and boundaries. Are there any changes or is there any discussion of Article 1? If not, we will move.
just a sec, Joe, I think, I guess I had my articles wrong here. No, go ahead.
Well, there was some confusion in my mind as I typed these.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to say.
All right, we'll consider Article 2, the Assembly.
Mr. Chairman, our attorney has proposed a different Article 2 inserted in here. Powers.
Mr. Garnett, you need to...
Yes, as a matter of a statement, we have to have this phrase about exercising all legislative powers. And the question came up whether to put it near the front or sort of stick it away in the back. I think traditionally, and most of the other things I've seen, the statement of powers is close to the front. If we put it in the rear, I feel it may be seen as sort of squirreling it away. As I understood it, we would soften the impact of the statement of powers by putting right next to it the provisions for initiative, referendum, and recall, and the other populist-type provisions like community councils. And I would propose that that's the most orderly way to do it.
We're in the thick of things.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the attorney's suggestion, creating a new Article 2 powers, moving up and properly renumbering the sections on initiative, referendum, and recall.
Second. And that would mean renumbering Article 2 to be Article 3?
Yes,
all
that's
the way
right.
through
We'd have
then.
to renumber. Actually, it would change even further because I'm proposing to stick community councils in as Article 3. And we'll just have to...
We knew this was coming. Those of us who run the typewriter.
All right.
Okay.
You have the amendment offered by Mrs. Sturgill-Lewski, was it the second?
Yes.
Who
Seconded
seconded
the
it?
amendment.
I'll second it.
I did. Seconded by Mrs. Holmes. Is there discussion of the amendment? Do you all understand the amendment?
Yes.
Is there objection to the amendment?
None.
The amendment did not include, did it, the moving of community councils?
No.
That's the
No.
other.
Very well, then the amendment is adopted as per Mr. Garnett's document entitled Suggestions for Finishing Touches on the First Draft for new Article 2. The next item would be, in normal order, the Assembly, unless someone wants to make a motion on the Community Council item.
Mr. Chairman, I prefer not to have the community councils because that's not a limitation on the powers. I prefer to have those come perhaps after the article on the Assembly. Since the Assembly is going to establish them, I'd like to have the Assembly spoken to
Given a
first.
little prominence over the community council. Yeah, I can see that.
And
We're going overboard with our populism.
maybe even the mayor before the.
Very well. You have before you Article 2, the Assembly renumbered to be Article 3. Is there discussion of that article or any change offered there? Ms. Parker?
Under section 206, meetings and
procedures, was that to be moved to another section so that the school board would also fall under this?
Mr. Chairman, I think we talked about that. And as a matter of practicality, I thought we, in trying to write the two together, ran into a problem and decided to leave them as they were. Was that?
That was what I thought.
It was a suggestion made early on, I think, that didn't work out.
We weren't sure we could bind the school district in its procedure, for instance.
Is there any other discussion of the assembly article?
Can we, have just a minute?
Yes, may I just something to talk to our guest member?
Do we, on D of 202, I may have missed that thing, a qualified motor may appear to Superior Court, appeal to Superior Court for review of a decision of the Assembly in this section. Is that for reassurance? Because I'm sure this procedure is open to them anyway.
Well, we've actually had some question about that, Jim, in light of the cases involving state legislators whose residence qualifications were challenged. The Orsini case, for instance, where the court did hold that there was no judicial review of the
unless it was
election
spelled out.
qualifications under state law, where it's not spelled out, where it
Okay.
says just the legislature is the sole judge.
Why does it bother me to have initiative, referendum, and recall in a section under powers?
Because you think in terms of powers of the municipality.
Powers of the people.
powers
And we
of
have
people.
power of the
Powers,
government and
period.
power of the people.
Right.
How come we say they meet, that the assembly meets twice each month?
The first sentence of the initiative thing, I think, is the power of initiative and referendum.
What?
How come we say the assembly meets, shall meet at
Yes.
least twice each month?
You're right.
How come only twice?
Well, the powers of the people.
I mean, they should be held to be more often.
I think so.
Mr. Chairman, I think very good reason for not specifying, say, there are holidays, there are other problems throughout the year, and I think you usually put a minimum, and then, of course, it goes on to the maximum. I just don't think it's even necessary to really have anything there at all, because they'll have to meet to handle the work.
All right, the article on the assembly is before you. Is open, isn't it? On that point or any others, Lisa? Is there amendment to the article on the assembly?
Oh, I guess I had a question. This is just sort of, we do provide somewhere for developing competitive bidding or requiring competitive bidding procedure, but allowing for exceptions, negotiated bids in the case where it was a sole supplier type situation and so forth. In section 208, we exempt an independent contractor engaged through competitive bidding from this prohibition on serving as an assemblyman. And my only question was whether we wanted possibly to include independent contractors engaged otherwise than through competitive bidding in that exemption as well. There may be a reason for the distinction, but I thought you might consider.
That isn't in 208 anymore, then.
Oh, okay.
207.
Yeah, 207. In the last sentence of section 207, it says an
Page 4,
independent
line
contractor
76.
engaged through.
Would you
No,
say?
Otherwise, are there any other changes to Article 2?
I'd say let this one go through.
Are you ready to proceed to the next article? Am I rushing you?
No, keep going. You're on a 3 now? Where are you?
I'd like to be on the executive branch. number 3, now number 4. All right. Are there any changes or discussion in section 301, Office of the Mayor?
Has anyone heard City Council, certain members are threatening to work against the charter if we use this form? Anyone heard that?
No. Who's putting that up?
No, seems to me.
This way.
Form. Oh,
Tell them to make it known at the public hearings.
Good sports game.
Oh, well. Confuse everybody all the time.
Very few anyway.
That shows that we can't calm all of
I like the
Exes
theory that we
fears.
should tell them we wrote the best we could.
Jesus tried to please everybody. Look what happened to him. They nailed him on a cross. I mean, have to carry his own cross at that.
it's the way it is.
The ultimate example.
Nothing's changed.
Okay, so section 302, powers of the mayor. Are there any suggestions or amendments to that?
Did you do something to 301?
No,
No.
that's where we are.
That peace officer really does me in.
Oh, like a peace office.
Down here, it says the assembly by resolution may declare an emergency no longer exists. I can remember the time we had a bomb threat, and it took us half an hour to decide whether we had an emergency or not. That was the funniest thing.
It was the threat in that building where they were meeting.
Yeah.
And they sat around meeting.
All right. Are there any amendments or discussion as to section
Powers
303?
the peace officer businesses from the city charter.
Yes. Very nice.
None at all, Mr. Chairman. from
On the
me.
whole article?
It's 303. 304?
Gosh, that Joe's
Little,
best reader.
little slower, Joe. Mr. Chairman.
This is none of this is good material. We should have had all them right.
No, I'm slower yet. I'm back on 302B.
All right.
Did we say that this included introducing ordinances, or is that assumed that the mayor can introduce ordinances? All powers but vote.
That's spoken to in the next section, or the next article on legislation, I believe.
Thank you.
I hope we
That the
gave it to
staff-
him.
Maybe introduced by an assemblyman, but we haven't added that, and that ought to be in Article 4.
When we get to that, we need to.
We had it and you withdrew it.
I remember it got knocked out, but this by implication still says you can, I think. Unless it's specifically spelled differently somewhere.
We,
All right.
Okay.
Chairs are 305.
Isn't that exciting?
Way out front.
Chairs at 305.
looks like the chair has to be the 40.
Okay, move to 306, Chair.
306, are
Listen,
there?
the peons are still on 304.
There are no peons in this group.
That's right. All fast readers.
I think different.
You're only what you think you are.
You're a peer.
Feel that you're a peer.
Here?
You have weak kidneys, right
No
here.
other way. I would say that the
Dehydrated French.
queens are still on, but that might be misinterpreted.
Okay.
306?
Right.
Joe, I'm on 306 now.
307 coming in.
306, any changes or amendments to 306?
Couldn't think of a way to rephrase it.
Are there any changes or amendments to 307?
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't sure that I put everything up into 407A out of the D section, remember, that we removed. Does that read okay, everyone?
Where are you?
Section A.
307.
We had a section D, of which we eliminated one sentence, and then I kind of made an arrow into my copy to move it up. I think it's the sentence about the assembly by ordinance may provide for regulatory appellate or quasi-judicial boards or commission. Is it okay where it is in section A?
Yeah.
I just didn't know if it read the way you...
That's the way it was originally intended, wasn't it? That was the one we had a lot of discussion on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all right.
And you said that was what you wanted to have
Oh.
survive. I just didn't know where to put it up in there. That seemed to make sense to me.
Now, Mr. Garnett's note indicates considering striking the phrase "by the Assembly" in the first sentence of 307A.
By the Assembly.
Only the Assembly does ordinances. Just because only the Assembly does ordinances, it's just
Oh, I see. Just a stylistic.
But
But then if we're going to strike all the by ordinances, are we going to be in
Ms.
trouble?
Ms. Parker moves to strike the phrase "by the Assembly."
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Parsons. Any objection? Without objection, the amendment is adopted.
What do we just do?
To strike the phrase "by the Assembly" on line 12 of page 7.
So then I'll just say boards and commission may be established, period.
By ordinance.
You know what, you might consider in light of what Evie said, striking by ordinance and leaving by the Assembly, because as I mentioned to some of you the other night, I'm proposing that we have a general provision that will make it possible for us to delete a lot of this sort of sing-song phrase, the Assembly by ordinance, the Assembly by ordinance. It would be a general provision that would say something like, well, it's in here, whenever the charter calls for particular assembly action, it shall be construed to require action by ordinance unless otherwise specifically stated. And then we would
It's pretty hard for the flock to follow you as a shepherd. Keep changing your tune.
my favorite today.
I know that. An uncertain drummer who shall march, you know? Oh, well.
Mr. Chairman, I move to reinsert by the Assembly and strike by ordinance.
Well, no, that's a different kettle of fish.
With the understanding that this shall be done by ordinance anyway.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I get offhand, I suspect that it may be an educated process for those who do read the document if they have that reassurance by ordinance phrase in there.
Lisa?
if we strike by ordinance and then we say the ordinance shall prescribe the purpose function, then this doesn't make sense. So why don't we go through and strike
You
all
got
the
a
things
point.
that say by the assembly instead of striking
Well,
by
Lisa, the phrasing, of course, through here varies somewhat, and in some places it won't be feasible to strike the phrase by ordinance without screwing up the whole syntax. And if the commission agreed to the general principle of reducing the use of that phrase, I would just have to go through and strike out the ones that seem to me strikeable, and then have somebody else look at it if they wanted to. As a matter of
Chairman, I withdraw my motion.
That's an objection? An objection to the withdrawal of the motion? The motion is withdrawn. Is there any other amendment to 307?
Mr. Chairman, I'm referring back to, perhaps to, well, I'm not sure where it goes in this thing, but we had a suggestion that there should be a chief fiscal officer appointed by the mayor. This was, remember, Francis, the other day, the recommendation of the finance people from the city and the borough. And I'm not sure that we need to say it in the charter, but they wanted a chief fiscal officer on a par with the municipal attorney and so forth. They wanted it spoken to. Before I propose it, I'd like kind of, can we talk about it for a second?
Title 29 state that the mayor will appoint the attorney, the fiscal officer, and one other. There's three in there that they,
Chief Administrative Officer.
I don't think it calls for a fiscal officer.
it calls for something like if this is where is that? Well, we don't have Title 29.
We do.
We don't?
Never without it.
Well, I don't recall they're saying there should be a chief fiscal officer. For instance, are they wanting it above, say, other departments? For instance, the city works with, they've got sort of three heads under one head, and I'm wondering if you're cutting, you're forcing the structure of the government into, into
I
the
had
law
just
and
made
the
this
fiscal and
footnote.
so on. I don't quite.
This was a request that both financial departments made. The borough and the city both came back and were very strong on the fact that there should be a fiscal officer for the municipality, somebody that is comparable to a treasurer of that status. You're talking about an overall, you are right, it's kind of pushing a position.
I'd personally not support anything right now. I'd like to talk again to them on a fiscal.
I had this as a footnote because in going over transition, Fred mentioned that they had said this, and I made a note to bring it up in this. There is here a municipal treasurer, custodian of all municipal funds, keep an itemized account. Treasurer shall give bonds to the municipality in the sum which the assembly or council directs.
That's okay. Can 100 and see if that's included?
Lisa?
Just, I'm wondering in section 307A where we say they can provide for regulatory appellate quasi-judicial. We can move section C up into A, and if we can combine the last sentence of A and B together into section B.
But they're after this.
You're suggesting that C be part of A, and the last sentence of A be part of B.
Delete section C altogether.
That's a stylistic suggestion. Is there any, do you all understand, Ms. Parnell?
No, they don't. Okay, I disagree with moving this, talking about the assembly in C, which is a very separate issue from setting up boards, the boards and commissions that are discussed in A.
But in A, it's talking about
Lisa, why don't you state that again and let the group,
to move section C up into section A after the quasi-judicial boards or commissions, and to move the last sentence of A into section B. Because in section A, we're talking about what different types of boards there are and that can be established.
all right, in this amendment, the A would end, the assembly by ordinance may provide for regulatory, appellate, or quasi-judicial boards or commissions. The assembly by ordinance may create or designate itself to be a board of review, adjustment, or equalization. B would read, boards and commissions may make recommendations to the assembly, the mayor, and heads of executive departments on matters specified in the ordinance creating the board or commission. The mayor appoints the members of boards and commissions unless otherwise specifically provided in this charter. Appointments are subject to confirmation by the assembly. Is that correct? Is there a second to that amendment?
I'll second that.
Mr. Chai seconds the amendment. For discussion. Mrs. Holmes?
Mr. Chairman, Rick, have we, it seems to me that the last sentence in A that Lisa's proposing to move into B says what the powers are. Is it I can't remember, consistent through the charter, do we talk about how it's established and the powers in one section, or have we split established powers?
Generally, we've had a powers provision, as I think about the school board, and the municipality has a powers provision. Do we do that with community council? Give them a... I don't know that we've been absolutely rigorous on that.
Is there further discussion of the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to support it. Possibly this does need some reworking, but I think that adds a bit of confusion when we follow then by the boards and commissions making recommendations to the Assembly. I think we're mixing apples and oranges, and they're quite different types of bodies.
Yes,
But it's confusing to me to stick in there that they may provide for regulatory, appellate, or quasi-judicial boards or commissions.
We're thinking in terms of the Board of Examiners and Appeals and the Planning Board and the Planning Commission and others that are non-assembly boards and commissions, I believe. I mean, that was the intent of that section.
Very well. Ms. Parker's amendment is before you. Objection is noted. The question is, shall the amendment be adopted to make subparagraph C part of subparagraph A following the phrase quasi-judicial boards or commissions, and to remove the last sentence of subparagraph A to the head of subparagraph B? The bottom of subparagraph B?
Yeah.
All right. The Secretary will call the roll on the amendment.
We begin with Chai.
Yeah.
Holmes,
no. Josephson?
Yes?
Parker,
Yes.
Parsons.
Yes.
No.
Being 4 yeas and 2 nays, the amendment fails.
There's
Mr.
7
Chairman?
of us.
Oh, pardon? 6 of us.
Oh.
Six. Ms. Holmes.
Mr. Chairman, I would offer a different amendment.
Sorry.
This would also have A ending with quasi-judicial boards and commissions. B would be as it is, and C would begin, boards and commissions may make recommendations to the Assembly and the Mayor, and so forth. So that the last sentence in A is made a new subsection C. And the present subsection C is renumbered to D.
Well, the amendment by Mrs. Holmes is to make the existing paragraph C paragraph D, and the last sentence of A becomes paragraph C.
If I have a second,
I'll second it.
speak to
Seconded by Mrs. Sherwood.
Mr. Chairman, this then means that A says how they're established, B says how the members are appointed, C says what they do.
Is there further discussion of the amendment? Is there objection to the amendment? Without objection, the amendment is approved.
Mr. Chairman, a point of inquiry. What happened to our motion of amendment by the Assembly?
Oh, that passed.
That passed.
Thank you.
Are there any other changes? Yes, it was. It passed, and then a motion was made to do something different.
To reinsert by
That was
assembly and
not
strike by
adequate
ordinance
reinsert.
and that.
In
Was
any
withdrawn.
case, I would hope the minutes reflect that it was passed without objection. I had a hunch it was
Thank you for
left.
raising that.
I thought it was substituted by Mrs. Holmes.
Yeah. And then left.
Very well.
Mr. Chairman, had we covered everything under, well, that whole Article 3 is on community councils then?
No, we did not.
We haven't done anything more.
But, I mean, no, I'm just, are Rick's comments all on what you proposed for the renumbered community council, 301, 302?
Yeah, that was just, say, my initial rewording of that
And
section.
307A was all included under community councils.
No. You
No.
know,
Yeah, that was just,
The
I didn't
307A?
reconform the wording.
we did the right 307A in terms of Mr. Grant's memo.
Okay.
All right, you're at Article 4, legislation,
Mr. Chairman,
Fine.
now numbered Article 5. Correct, Mrs. Parker?
I would move to insert the community councils after executive branch.
The motion is to place the community
I'll
art
second that.
council article at this point, correct?
Right.
Renumbering Article 4 legislation as Article 5 and subsequent articles. Seconded by Mrs. Strzalewski. Is there objection?
Mr. Chairman, just one question for clarification. Are the things that are listed here the same that we passed on before?
This wording here is slightly different
Well,
from the
that's-
wording that's passed. This is not.
Well, we'll
different.
take up the...
As I don't think you should pay too much attention to what I have written here in this.
Okay, right now it's just to
No
move
status.
it in place,
Just-
we
okay?
have
Just
a
do it.
revision of the community council article in the back of that packet that you recorded.
This just has to do with
Page
ordering.
25,
Is there objection
the back.
to Ms. Parker's motion to place the community council article at this point in the chart? Hearing none, the motion is approved. And we have a new Article 4.
Surely that would be, since we've added, Mr. Chairman, an Article
That is community council
2
article
on,
Article 5. Yeah, it would be a new Article 5. And Article 4 becomes Article 6. Would you like to take up the community council article now or at page 25? Or if you turn to page 25, then you have the new Article 5.
so there was that one change, inserting the word community, like you put councils and this new word was adopted.
Right.
That's right.
Are you all, do you all have a page in front of you?
This is what I have.
Yeah.
I'll just take a reading.
Mr. Granite, you want to speak to this since you had some comments?
I don't have a whole lot to say, Joe. These suggested 301 and 302 was just my idea of possibly shortening the wording, emphasizing the policy aspect of it in a separate sentence. I didn't intend any substantive change to the rewording.
Mr. Chairman? You're not talking about a representative governing body shall be elected by the community council. Okay, you're looking there toward a community council being possibly can be the whole. Is that right, Sherry? Because, well, you're not, I don't know, this bothers me a little in the wording. It's not necessarily looking toward the Eagle River situation, is it, where you would, that is the reason for that. Yeah, I know it's the reason for it, and I'm just not sure it comes off, is what I'm saying. A representative governing body shall be elected by the community council, which could be done other than at the ballot box, couldn't it?
Any way they see fit.
Any way they see fit. But it wouldn't bar.
It would be governed by ordinance and would, I assume, be further explained in the ordinance.
It could provide either for just at an annual meeting, or it could provide by actually running for office area-wide.
People getting together and
Yeah,
just
that's
appointing
what-
each other.
The key word, I believe, Mr. Chairman, is the word representative. And this is not sacred word, and if you can think of a better
No,
way to say
it just didn't hit me as I thought.
what the people in Eagle River wanted was to be sure that there was an elected body governing their community council rather than an appointed one. And the reason they wanted that was that there are two distinct factions out there, and they wanted to be sure that one faction was not running the community.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion of the article? Any amendments?
No.
Any objection? Not, we'll move on to Article 6. Sure.
I'd like to say something in our list, general provisions under definition. We're going to define community councils.
Okay. That's going to be it.
Article 6 is before your legislation.
We didn't change anything. Okay.
Section 401.
Chairman, it's at this point that I believe we ought to insert in 401B, an ordinance may be introduced by an assemblyman or the mayor.
Second.
Motion is to amend paragraph B by inserting the phrase "or the mayor" after the word "assembly."
No, Mr. Chairman, did we have some discussion there previously and agreed to leave it out, or?
We had, when we first considered this, agreed not to have the administration doing it. And then on further consideration, I believe it was last Saturday, we started looking at the fact that the administrative code, for instance, was going to be proposed by the administration, but they would have to scurry around and find an assemblyman to introduce it. And that it seemed, so long as we were having a lot of things done by the administration, proposed by the administration, they ought to be able to propose directly.
In the state constitution, there's a provision that the governor has the right to have legislation introduced, but it's done by a committee and the heading is at the request of the governor, which maintains in theory the separation a little better than.
This is my concern, Mr. Chairman, and with our quorum situation this morning, I don't want to be holding off on the thing, but I really think that
Do this tonight?
no, what I'm saying is conceptually, I think that what Joe states, if it can be said, makes better sense to me in terms of the separation of powers, and also since the mayor indeed is a strong mayor, and that to every degree from our results in polls and like, we should tilt the thing slightly towards the legislative in terms of checks.
I'd like to throw another little element that I don't know if we ever successfully resolved. We talk here about an assemblyman being able to introduce an ordinance and then go on as to how it's going to be published and so on. Are we saying that that just one can really bring it to public hearing? Remember there was concern about that you could get all sorts of, capricious. Now they take, it's introduced and then it takes 6 to set it for public hearing, and are we aborting that, or would it still take 6? See, there's an introduction.
I know what you mean, and I remember this was discussed several times.
Yeah.
I believe Mary felt very strongly that an assemblyman, and Jim needed it, should be able to get the thing
Introduced, but
without any possibility
Mary
of
wanted
voting.
2 or 3.
Yeah.
well, see, no, but there's two things. There's an introduction, and then there's a setting for public hearing. The introduction really brings it up for, or at least the way it presently works, for assembly action. We're speaking here as though there's only one thing.
No, I'm just saying, I understand, Arthur. I'm just saying that I think the last time we went over this, that was what they did. I mean, they intended to do what you're saying this does. And so it would be a substantive question at this point whether that is the result the commission wants.
I don't think it is. I think we've got a problem.
The pending question is the insertion of the phrase "or the mayor" after the term of Assembly. Is there any other discussion of that?
Mr. Chairman, can you phrase it the way you were ruminating?
No, I can't phrase it.
I would prefer it if you could come up with a happy turn.
If you make a suggestion, I might offer it instead.
Say it's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's about the mayor. I mean,
Okay, I wonder if something, and this is, because there really is a problem here, I think. But after your first sentence, an ordinance may be introduced by Assemblyman or the mayor at a regular or special meeting of the Assembly, something that to this effect. After setting for public hearing, which requires X votes or a majority vote of the Assembly, the clerk shall publish and go on into
following introduction upon the concurrence of at least 3 assemblymen, the clerk shall publish a notice or something of that sort.
Yes, Ms. Holmes?
Chairman, Arliss, that really, you might as well then require that the ordinance be introduced by 3 assemblymen, because you have the same effect. You don't get anything more by having the assemblyman be able to raise his or her voice at the meeting and say, I want to introduce this ordinance, and then you have to find the people to concur to set it for public hearing. At the time that we decided to change it from 3 or 2 assemblymen to 1, I think the feeling was that you ought to be able, as an assembly person, to introduce something and get it set for public hearing and let the people speak on it.
by one person.
By one person.
Gosh, I don't remember we went that far.
I'm under the impression that was
Belabored, I think it's.
But what I'm
About
saying,
the firecracker.
going back to the proposition that I was saying, well, it's a little wordy, but I had in mind something that the mayor may cause an ordinance to be introduced. Such ordinances shall be shown as introduced by the chairman of the assembly at the request of the mayor.
Yes.
That's the thing that I'm trying
The
to.
mayor may introduce an ordinance which shall be styled, quote, by the mayor upon request
By the chairman at the request of the mayor, so that it is actually introduced formally by a member of the body of that
Chairman, I
branch.
would move for the insertion of a separate sentence after sentence 1 of B with that kind of wording.
I would withdraw my motion, first of all, to make it.
It
Oh,
was
I'm
never
sorry.
seconded, was it?
Was it second? No, okay then.
Could you somewhat say that again, Rick?
Let me try. I would say the mayor may introduce ordinances which shall be styled, quote, by the chairman, say,
The mayor may cause an ordinance to be introduced.
okay.
Okay.
Cause.
An ordinance to be introduced. Semicolon. Each such ordinance shall be styled quote, by the chairman of the assembly at the request of the mayor.
What was the word style?
Yeah, it wasn't hexameters.
That's a funny word.
Or shall be captioned. Would that be better?
Okay.
No, No, what do we mean captioned?
That you're using terms that aren't familiar to us.
It shall be noted.
How, it's style.
It's
the
so
only
the
word
top
I've
of
ever
the
heard
ordinance
used.
tells you
Yeah,
to
but
put it
style
in.
doesn't mean anything to the public.
Yeah, I know. I don't know a synonym. That's the problem.
It
Shall,
should be,
shall carry the notation.
All right, each such ordinance shall carry the notation by the chairman of the assembly at the request of the mayor.
what's that mean?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It simply preserves the notion that the mayor,
Or shall we say state?
it preserves the notion that the actual introduction is by a member of the body, and that the ordinance is separated from others because it is shown to have an
Why
administration.
can't you say introduced by the chairman? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, all right, you can say that. Each such ordinance shall be introduced by,
Quote, by the chairman.
All right,
I still
that's
put
more
that
than
in.
to the public.
How about Jim's idea, which shall state, the mayor may cause to be introduced ordinances which shall state, quote, by the
chairman
chairman
of the assembly at the request of the mayor.
That way you're not using any arcana.
State.
Afraid you're quibbling.
No, I'm trying to read it the way the public would read it.
State is, I think, a word
Shall
the public
state,
understands.
quote.
State, quote, by the chairman of the assembly at the request of the mayor.
Oh, well now, see? The light dawned. Fred, you haven't had the light yet.
If I haven't had it, when's the public gonna get it?
No, it's the quotes. It's just the manner of the yeah, you see it all ran together and I didn't hear the quotes. If you hear the quotes, you'll be all right.
Yeah, I hear the quotes. It's being introduced by the chairman.
At the,
The point is, he has to introduce it if the mayor requests.
Right, why don't you say introduced and have it simplified? What do you mean by state?
The mayor may cause an ordinance to be introduced.
Up at the top
Each
of
such
the ordinance,
shall
there was a
state,
little
quote,
thing
by
that
the
said,
chairman of the
"This was
assembly
introduced by the
at the
chairman of
request of the
assembly."
mayor.
Right, yes, right. But what does that mean to the public?
Well, I don't.
How many times has the public seen one of those things?
We'll show them one.
I see.
Well, I
Why don't
think
you
they're
just say-
aware of it when the governor does it. The news media always makes a point of.
Oh, the news media.
It identifies it as part of the administration's program, it's their bill.
I'm just looking for an easy way of saying something, and you say it's going to be introduced by the chairman, and everyone says, fine, he's going to introduce it. That's it. Why get technical?
well, what we want to be sure is that it is clearly stated that the chairman will do that for the mayor.
But this is his
This is the
method of
mayor's
entry,
way to get
still
in.
preserving the
And
separation.
that even after he does it, it's.
I'm not going to quibble it. I don't deal in small things. Go ahead.
All right. The amendment is to add the sentence just read by the attorney as the second sentence of the. Is there objection? If not, the addition is made. Now, Artis, if you want to be heard on the.
No, I'm going to, check this out with some people as we just go along. I'd like to hear some input. I think it means that you'll get a lot of capricious legislation thrown in. Everybody, this way, they're
Mr. Chairman, I understand that point,
Yeah.
but to do otherwise, I think, limits the autonomy of the individual assemblyman in a way that I would consider not good government. That it would lessen his individual power to be representative of his particular constituency.
Lisa?
So, at the end of this section, can we put in there that the ordinances shall be reviewed every 5 years by the legislative body?
It's all out. It's open to amendment.
That's quite a chore.
Why do that?
It's like when they have a constitutional convention to go over the Constitution and make changes or statutes or something like that, so that you get rid of all the old, outdated ordinances, and if the amendments have been made, and just to keep things clean.
How about all ordinances shall expire at the end of 10 years unless readopted by the legislative body? 10 years from the date of
Going for the rest of everything.
But I think modern communities now have legal advisory of ordinances who keeps a running tab and throws out the superseded ones by court decision or conflict, or at least
No,
knows
the state does anyway, I don't know if the borough has.
You know, it's like those states in the South that have laws going back to 1860 that are still applicable.
Nothing wrong with
The United States government does that.
Considered the Civil Rights Act of 1861.
There have been both on the borough and the city level a process of recodification, and
It's really an operating procedure.
I think there's recognition of it and it's taken care of. I don't worry
I don't
about
think you want to restrict it, make that restricted
Well,
statement.
at least the matter's open to amendment if you want to pursue it.
Yeah.
That's a girl.
Very well. We're on.
Now,
Are there for now?
to have
Yeah. Are there any other? Is there any other discussion of 401? Now 601. 602. Actions requiring an ordinance. Oh, I do.
Mr. Chairman, I guess a question of style. Basically, in 7, we're talking about requiring an ordinance to sell land. We have the phrase "except" as provided in subsection 8, as though 8 is an exception to 7, whereas really 8 is an extension of the procedures with respect to selling a particular type of land. I think we could omit that phrase "except" as provided in subsection 8.
Let's see, how would 7 read then?
Just,
think
you
that-
have to have an ordinance
71.
to convey
Okay.
or lease and so forth, and an aid stands by itself. You also have to have an ordinance to convey part property, and in addition, you have to go through the voting procedure.
Mr. Chairman, move to delete item 7 where it says except as provided in subsection 8 of this section.
Second.
Moved and seconded to strike the phrase before the comma, paragraph 7. Any objection? If not, the amendment is adopted. Are there any other amendments?
Further question is, this came up at the meeting when we first discussed this term, interest in real property in section 7, as expressed by Dick, was intended to refer to easements and maybe short-term leases, licenses, and so forth. However, I think the word interest in law really refers to any type of, or it can be read as referring to any type of interest. And if you leave it the way it is, it's possible that the exception could swallow the rule here, where we say that by ordinance they may establish procedures for acquisition and disposition of interest in real property. They could determine that interest
It's the whole.
was pretty expansive.
Yeah.
I would suggest putting in the word, this is a little awkward maybe, but less than a fee interest or some such limiting phrase after the word interest, merely to clarify that concept. Okay.
For the return acquisition.
What, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be excused for a spell. You still can maintain a quorum if I give you my proxy.
we cannot.
Yeah, no, proxies. I have some of a problem, but what we might do is, since we're going to be back, if we fail to have a quorum, since we're going to be back, or a quorum will be back tonight, is to keep on going as a work session. We can do that.
Okay. Fine, I'll
No,
go
I think we
with
should.
that.
Okay, thank you.
May I make one comment, which I'd like to leave with you? Last night we had a discussion on that utilities section in the transition. And as I look at section 307 and article, I believe it's article 6. No, wait a minute, article, was it 11 or 6? Article 11. may be that these two can cover what we're saying in this and eliminate that in transition. I don't know.
It was eliminated last time.
Yeah.
307 is on how boards and commissions are established,
I'm going to follow that.
and the other one is utilities.
Okay, should I try this one more
Yeah,
time?
would you? Because I'm
In
not-
7 here, we require an ordinance for conveying land. Then we have an exception in that the assembly can provide by ordinance for routine acquisition and disposition of an interest. Now, Dick distinguishes interest from other types of land by interpreting it to mean easements and licenses, other less than full ownership interests in land. All I'm saying is that in law, as far as I know, the word interest is broader than that, and it can and probably would be read to include any conceivable interest in land, including full ownership in land. Therefore, the legal effect of this except clause might be to swallow the whole thing, or at least potentially allow the assembly to swallow it.
Mr. Chairman, my reading of this was that there was any interest, and the distinction that I have in the except phrase is routine. And this would include lands routinely acquired, say, in tax foreclosure.
Because then it becomes, I think, a policy question.
And what I envision is that the ordinance, the general ordinance establishing the procedures would define which ones were routine acquisitions and further refine the term interest.
If that's what you want to do, that's fine. That'll be okay. Dick had said something contrary when we first discussed it as to what his intent was originally, or their intent.
Yeah, I think that's all right.
Is there any other discussion of this paragraph?
The way it is, you think so? That we should not say of interest less than a fee interest in real property.
Yeah, actually, you can strike interest altogether and just put disposition of real property. If you're talking about the same real property in the except clause as in the other. I think
I'm just wondering how we are going to proceed here.
Well, Mary is intending to come, so why don't we, Mr. Chairman, stand at ease in our regular meeting, move into a work session, and work in an advisory capacity until next.
What time do you
What
have
time
to
do you
leave,
have to
Joe?
do?
Well, I just have probably a long start waiting for me to review a brief with them and get that out today. That's sort of, I don't have a fixed appointment.
he just promises to keep in miles to go before he sleeps.
Why do I have the feeling we all have?
I'm going to take a nap.
Certain ennui setting in here.
Yeah, I said that earlier.
Well,
Did Mary indicate when she might?
No, she was on the tear this morning. I thought she'd be here by now, but I have no idea.
I thought Jean was going to come by.
I suspect Jane was up all night, and she's leaving
was
at
gonna
1
come
a.m.
by and
this
bring
morning.
me
and
something,
I'm
so I
going
don't think she'd do it.
Getting ready to go, you know.
Yeah, she had office work to do.
Are we going to have a forum tonight?
Is Bill in here? Is he aware of this meeting?
I called him this word.
I might be a little late tonight again.
You know what I could do, Sherry, is to excuse myself, let you work as a work session, and then if Mary comes, come back, because then my presence with my forum.
That's
All right.
Fine with me.
Let me ask who's free to work if that doesn't happen until 1 o'clock.
well, I thought you were making a speech this noon.
At noon.
That doesn't
Free.
happen until 1 o'clock. Well, for instance, if Mary returns at 11:30, there's no point because
Well, who's free to work till 1? You're not free.
starting at 1.
Oh,
Starting
I
over again.
prefer not to work this afternoon.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
In fact, if you want me to, when I get to my office, I'll call Mary.
She's out at AMU, so.
Oh,
Now, why don't you do that, Joe?
okay.
Maybe we can,
Okay, but I'll be in my office, so if you want me to form, so you can formalize any action you take.
Were you going
By
to
that
leave
time
us
we
a
may have
dime for
phone.
the nearest bagel?
By that time, we may have phone. I suggested he call our girl back that referral service was not satisfactory, and he muttered that he was calling the mayor.
Who was calling her name?
Fred.
You told me to last night.
Are you gonna be in the panel discussion this afternoon?
You?
Yeah. So what are we talking about?
Yes.
20 minutes.
I admit to a
Well, no.
certain surprise at seeing the article in the paper this morning. No one informed the executive secretary of any appearances.
We were only informed yesterday afternoon, so that was
Yeah.
okay, what we've done, what our schedule intends to be.
Speak into the mic. See you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Bunch of clowns, you know. I know, but they're clowns. Get their attention, they won't hear you.
Why is that? Don't they listen?
Social.
No, just those two. I'm gonna put it like that.
Both parties have not intended
You need one too?
You might as well get the funds to use before we have a few hours left on it.
Well, yeah, I think that the end of the first draft is an appropriate time
For a draw?
Well,
Jerry, let's get through this damn thing.
All right, am I stepping in as chairperson? All righty. Any other suggested changes to 402?
did you
Yeah.
think about striking
Yeah, I'm trying.
of and interest in, the last part, the streets, routine acquisition, disposition of real property? So that you eliminate confusion as to whether...
They could still do it with interest in. Yeah.
Yeah, but then Vic's going to argue, and maybe other people, that, you know, the term interest is limiting, and you get a debate about it, maybe.
I think we should delete it if that's the intent, that by ordinance they can set up how they're going to handle it. And so you wouldn't want to limit it just because you do have to talk about foreclosure lands and other lands that are acquired.
For instance, Mary said that they do require ordinances now, even to sell tax foreclosure land. We would be changing or permitting that to be changed.
Do you see any problem in that, Jim, taking out
They may
interest in?
enact the general ordinance. It would be the discretion of the assembly as to how they wish to handle this.
Now, my concern is not personal, but that we have covered the legal bases that have been raised, and however this satisfies the majority of people, I'm perfectly content.
Yeah,
with
we'll have to bring
This
this
is
up.
all
to the
advisory. I have a big line to run across here.
No.
This is everything we do
We
from
can't
here
take
on.
any action.
Although we might make suggestions and then move to adopt as pro forma the suggestions of the
I don't know if Mary will vote for that.
No big quote.
Well, maybe it won't be there.
Maybe we won't have enough.
If we don't have enough, we're in a stew. We have to get people to come for 5 minutes and stamp what we've
Let's-
done for the first draft. Okay, how about in subsection 8? Do you have anything?
Lisa, aren't you with us?
Yeah, I'm trying to get my blood circulating.
Okay,
My
emergency
standing is
ordinances,
anti-armally too.
section 403. We had a query.
Well, yeah, this was late at night. My question was whether it was appropriate for the mayor to veto emergency ordinances when they can only be enacted by a supermajority in the first place. And if so, what sort of effect the veto would have.
403.
Yeah, since a veto is overridden by a two-thirds majority and it takes a three-fourths majority to enact, and he may only do it at the same meeting, the extent of his effectiveness would be to say, I veto that, and they would take another vote.
Yeah, or instantaneously it would be overridden or whatever. I personally, without somebody telling me something different that I don't know about, I don't see any meaning at all to having a veto provision for emergency ordinance.
I would therefore suggest that we strike it. Does that meet with everyone's approval?
That sentence
Yes.
on 19.
19 and 20, beginning the mayor may veto.
Do you need me to keep a record of this?
Yeah, that really is kind of dumb.
No, well,
No? Okay.
Put you on the tape. Well, it's just that I could spend my time very fruitfully upgrading all the changes
Yeah.
to get it to the printer tomorrow of what we've done so far.
you go ahead and I'll make notes of this because we'll have to take this action again.
Why, you don't want to keep the tape going?
No, because we're not going to have time to listen to this tape and it's not official action. So